Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Follow the money. How long have I been saying that here on this podcast? How long have I been talking about the financial aspect and the financial crimes of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise? I've said it from the jump. The way we're going to get these enablers, if we're ever going to get them, is to tie them to Epstein's criminal enterprise financially. Because those people who weren't involved in the direct abuse of these girls should still get their comeuppance. They should still have a date with destiny. Because it was their transactions, their business ties that created the environment for Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal enterprise to flourish. They helped him with the trades, they invested his money, and they also accepted business he would steer in their direction. Now, we've talked extensively about people like Jess Staley, Les Wexner, Glenn Dubin, and the subject of today's topic, Leon Black. All of these billionaires who facilitated Jeffrey Epstein's financial world have to answer questions. They must all be brought in, and they must all talk about what their ties were to Jeffrey Epstein. Because, folks, when we're talking about the financials here, well, there are receipts. And you have to believe and think there are teams of forensic accountants right now as we speak digging into this stuff. And the story we're going to talk about today is just another example of how this investigation is blooming, how this investigation is growing. See, usually with your fields, you got to water it right with some water. Well, with this, we have to water it with some evidence and see what grows. And that's what's been going on for a year, over a year now. And I'll tell you what, it's starting to get some legs. It is really starting to get some legs. When you hear a name like Leon Black and the word subpoena in it, you know that things are heating up and the investigation is getting very, very serious. Our article today is from the New York Times, and the authors are Matthew Goldstein, Steve Etter, and David Enrich. The headline: Virgin Islands will subpoena billionaire investor in Epstein case. And like I said, that billionaire investor is Leon Black. So Mr. Leon Black and his company Apollo are going to be getting subpoenaed by the U.S. Virgin Islands and Denise George as she continues her extensive look into Jeffrey Epstein's finances. Officials in the U.S. Virgin Islands want the billionaire investor Leon Black, one of the most powerful men on Wall Street, to hand over information about his decades-long business ties to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Well, you would think that this information would have been sought after a lot earlier, but better late than never. And thankfully, Denise George is continuing her investigation at the same time that the investigation is cracking off in the SDNY. And this is something I've talked about as well. I would like to see as many of these separate investigations initiated as possible. Let's get one going in New Mexico. Let's have one in France. Let's have one in England. Run them all at the same time, because then the likelihood of some of these charges really sticking grows immensely. And at the end of the day, these people need to face justice. The territory's Attorney General, Denise M. George, informed a local court on Thursday that she would issue civil subpoenas to Mr. Black, a founder of the private equity firm Apollo Global Management, and several entities connected to him, the chief clerk of the court said. So these are civil subpoenas, right? These are not criminal subpoenas right now. This is about the finances. She wants to find out the ties between Black, Global, Epstein, and Epstein's entities. And what'll happen is, this is sort of like the perjury trap I talk about, right? They set up the perjury trap, have you walk into it, and then nail you. Kind of the same here. Let's see these finances, they get their fingers on them, they get their claws dug in, and it starts to become a situation where they're looking at one set of financials, but the investigation grows, and before you know it, well, the civil subpoenas, well, they become criminal subpoenas. And that's how these kind of things work. Look, when you're dealing with the richest people in the world, the most powerful people in the world, you have to cross all of your T's and dot all of your I's as a prosecutor if you think you're going to have any chance to nail these people. And I think every avenue needs to be explored, especially when it comes to the finances. So I'm glad to see Denise George is taking a hardline approach here and really digging in. The subpoenas, copies of which were filed with the court, seek financial statements and tax returns for a number of entities, including Black Family Partners and Elysium Management, which oversees some of Mr. Black's $9 billion fortune. Subpoenas will also go to Apollo and entities that help manage Mr. Black's extensive art collection. Again, ties to the art world. I think it's important that we recognize this. The art world is utterly corrupt. People like Eileen Guggenheim and the New York Academy of Arts, all of these places have a lot to answer for. And do you think it's any surprise that all of these billionaires seem to have a bunch of artwork? Are they really collecting it because they enjoy the artwork, or is it just another harbor, another safe place for them to launder money? Mr. Black has said Mr. Epstein provided him with advice on tax strategy, estate planning, and philanthropy, but has provided no details. A representative for Mr. Black said the financier had no further comment. So you're getting tax strategy advice from Jeffrey Epstein, a notorious money launderer, swindler, and all-around criminal? Yeah, that's going to work out for you real well, Mr. Black. You're one of the richest men in the world. Why do you have Jeffrey Epstein involved with your finances, just like Les Wexner? It does not make sense, folks. Not one bit. There's something deeper here. Leon Black has always been more deeply connected to Jeffrey Epstein than people have let on, and it's time for his role and the part he played on the Epstein stage to also be aired out. Mr. Black and his companies paid millions in fees to Southern Trust Company, which Mr. Epstein set up in the Virgin Islands in 2013, according to 3 people briefed on the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. So, basically, Leon Black and his companies paid millions in fees to Southern Trust Company, which we know was a shell company, which we know was laundering money. Now, my question is, did they pay these fees, or was this money given to Southern Trust to wash because it was ill-gotten gains? Now, I don't have any evidence to directly link that. It's just a question. It's speculation. It's what we're talking about here. There is no other plausible explanation, in my opinion, than this was a very elaborate money laundering scheme and a way for them to front and make sure they had harbors so they did not have to pay the taxes. Mr. Epstein had told territorial officials that Southern Trust was developing a DNA data mining service, although he said the company would also have a financial arm. Financial reports filed with the territory show that Southern Trust collected $184 million in fees from 2013 to 2018, although it was not clear how much of that came from Mr. Black. And that's why these records are being subpoenaed. That's why Mr. Black's finances are going to be dug through. And that is why all of these people who had business dealings with Jeffrey Epstein better not be feeling very comfortable right now. Because if this investigation keeps growing the way it is, and if the prosecution continues to do their job correctly, like they're doing finally, well, this is going to be one of the most epic takedowns of scumbaggery in the history of the world. The question is, does the prosecution have the stomach to do it? Mr. Black has said Mr. Epstein did no work for Apollo, which invests more than $300 billion for pension funds and other investors. The company said in a statement that Mr. Epstein did not do business with the firm. Some of the subpoenas are for companies that Mr. Black, the chairman of the Museum of Modern Art, has used to build a collection that includes paintings by Edgar Degas, Henri Matisse, and Pablo Picasso. Imagine having that kind of money, folks, where you're just, buying Picassos and, putting them up wherever you want, in your living room, your bathroom, whatever it may be. And at the same time, you have all this money to buy artwork and all this other shit. You're still so cheap that you're looking for safe harbors and ways to launder money. That's how these people all end up going down. Greed is their downfall. And I am sure Leon Black is not the exception to the rule, okay? Leon Black is like Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. That's the sort of supervillain we're dealing with here. It was not clear when the subpoenas would be served. Courts in the Virgin Islands are largely shut down because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Attorney General is seeking documents from Mr. Black related to Southern Trust and other companies and organizations that were controlled by Mr. Epstein, who died last summer in federal custody while facing federal sex trafficking charges. His death was ruled a suicide, allegedly. The request represent a significant step in Miss George's efforts to unravel the mystery of how Mr. Epstein amassed an estate valued at more than $600 million. And again, remember, Denise George has her own motivations here. She's trying to recoup some of this money for the Virgin Islands, positioning them as a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, where I counter that they were not a victim. In fact, they helped facilitate his crimes, and they also gave him a place where he could set up a bank such as this and a financial situation such as this where he would get tax breaks and people would look the other way. So for the Virgin Islands, my point to them is, my statement to them is, you've already dipped. You've already wet your beak. You're not wetting your beak twice on this, okay? All of this money is for the survivors. Any money that Denise George finds needs to go directly into a fund for the survivors. I don't want to hear shit about any state, any territory, any country, anybody but the survivors getting a piece of this dough. They are part of a civil forfeiture suit she filed against his estate in January, claiming Mr. Epstein had misled government officials in the Virgin Islands to secure lucrative tax breaks for his businesses while engaging in sex trafficking and the abuse of underage girls. Well, that's all fine and well, and that's a likely excuse to try and save face for her colleagues in the Virgin Islands, but that's not going to work, Miss George. Do us all a favor and just focus on bringing in justice. Don't focus on putting your hand in the pocket of the survivors, please. Miss George has also sent subpoenas to banks that handled Mr. Epstein's money, including J.P. Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank. Some of the payment information involving Mr. Black surfaced during a review by Deutsche Bank, according to one of the people briefed on the matter. Deutsche Bank recently reached a settlement with regulators in New York who found the bank had done little to vet Mr. Epstein's financial dealings. Yeah, the money was just a small amount, right? $150 million to Deutsche Bank doesn't mean shit, but it was the message that was sent that I think was important. I think what it does is it shoots a shot over the bow and lets all of these institutions know that while you might think you're getting away with this shit, not for much longer. People are paying attention, and the financial portion of this is so large, folks. I don't think I can stress how big and how deep these financial crimes really were. When we're talking about people like Leon Black and Les Wexner and Glenn Dubin, we're talking about some of the most powerful people on Wall Street. And Jeffrey Epstein was intimately involved with all of them. Deutsche Bank has recently reached a settlement with regulators in New York who found the bank had done little to vet Mr. Epstein's financial dealings. Mr. Black knew Mr. Epstein for more than 2 decades. Mr. Epstein was one of the original trustees of the Deborah and Leon Black Family Foundation, which Mr. Black established in 1997 and stayed on the board for a decade. Again, another person who has been friends with Epstein since the 90s. Another man who has been very tight with Jeffrey Epstein for decades. And, let's not forget, he sat on the board here for the Black Family Foundation from 97 all the way until 2007. And do you think that if Epstein wasn't caught for abusing these girls, that Black would have broke his relationship off with Epstein? Do you think Leon Black had no idea what was going on? Everybody knew. Journalists knew. These rich sons of bitches knew. And most assuredly, the people that were associated with Epstein financially and otherwise knew. Epstein had no kids, he had no nieces, no nephews, none of that. But yet, all these young girls are around all the time, and you mean to tell me Leon Black had no idea? Sorry, I'm not buying it. Dig deeper. Some prominent business figures, including Leslie H. Wexner, the retail mogul behind Victoria's Secret, cut ties with Mr. Epstein after his 2008 conviction in Florida on a charge of soliciting prostitution from a minor, but Mr. Black did not. All right, well, Leslie Wexner didn't cut ties with Epstein because he was disgusted by Epstein's behavior. He was trying to distance himself. I'm so sick of people running cover for Wexner. What are you so scared of, New York Times? I thought The Gray Lady was supposed to be this fearless publication, but really, it hasn't been the case for quite some time, and you see it over and over again. They'll just dig, they'll scratch the surface, but they won't go deep enough. They won't ask the hard questions. In 2015, a company tied to the Black Foundation donated $10 million to one of Mr. Epstein's charitable organizations. And, at Mr. Epstein's urging, Mr. Black gave an anonymous $5 million donation to the MIT Media Lab, according to a university report, and several million to professors at Harvard University. Mr. Black has said he was completely unaware of the activities that led to the sex trafficking charges against Mr. Epstein. What's significant here is, remember, I've talked about this a lot, and I think it's important that we put the focus on it. These scientists and professors at Harvard were getting paid directly from Epstein and Epstein's cohorts. Was that money reported? Did they pay taxes on that money? How was that money earned in the first place? You see, this is why it's so important that RICO charges are brought. Because the second the RICO umbrella opens, all of these disgusting sons of bitches will begin to understand what fear truly is. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that pertain to this episode are in the description box. All right, everybody, enjoy your Sunday.